Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, Treasury Talent community, wherever you may be. This is Joe Grabowski with Treasury Talent, joined as always by Simon Lynch in Australia. Simon, how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. You're doing great, Tom.
Awesome, awesome. And also by Scotty John out west in Utah. Scotty, what's going on in your world? How you doing?
Hey, Joe. Nothing new to report here this week.
Awesome, happy to hear it. And we're just, Michigan is Michigan, so we'll leave that here. We're fortunate enough to be joined by Mike McCormick from Ygrene Energy Fund. He's the Director of Capital Markets. Mike, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Where in the world are you located?
I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, the North Bay. Ygrene has an office in the Petaluma area, so it's kind of near Napa and Sonoma.
Awesome, awesome. And it's a nice time of the year. Well, given all things considered, I'm not even going to go down that route. Never mind, we'll back that out. So anyway, we'll jump right into it. Treasury Talent community, again, thanks for joining us. If you have any questions for Mike or for us along the way, please add any comments, any questions that you have. We'll make sure that you get them answered. And with that, Scotty, lead us off. What are we doing?
All right, thanks, Joe. So yeah, I'll just jump right in here, Mike. You've worked in ratings, investment banking, financial services, and now PACE financing, which we'll get to here in a little bit. But can you just tell me what have been some of the highlights for you?
Sure. Starting my career at S&P was a great experience. You know, learning from the rating agencies and just how all the collateral worked, how a rating agency worked. Certainly at the beginning of the financial crisis was a good way to just kind of hit the ground running. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Bear Stearns. I worked at Bear Stearns from 2007 to 2008 in a mortgage-backed securities front office type of role. Even today, 12 years later, it's something that people want to talk about and want to know more. It was a crazy time and great experience. So, you know, it's definitely a highlight. And then at Ygrene, we were the first and only PACE issuer to have one of the big three S&P, Moody's, or Fitch rating agencies on one of our transactions. And to this day, we're still the only one with a big three rating agency. And so it was an incredible achievement to be able to get to something like that. And so, you know, definitely, you know, something that stands out.
What's the one piece of advice for listeners that you've got, Mike, that over your career you've learned that you wish you had have known at the beginning of your career?
I'm going to go with two. So sorry, Simon. One is, you know, that your career is a marathon and not a sprint. I know personally when I first started working, I was just so eager to just do everything and get everything done right now and today. And I wasn't always focusing on the big picture and taking a step back and realizing, you know, that it is a marathon. And similarly, you know, to not worry about what everyone else is doing and where someone else is in their career. You know, if someone is more senior to you at the same age or things like that, to just, you know, we're all running our own race, and there's no need to be focused so much on what others are doing, as long as you're happy with what you're doing.
Absolutely. So just with the taking a step back, taking a look at the bigger picture, how do you feel that's helped you throughout the course of your career?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's allowed me to not worry so much about, you know, the day to day, and just realize that, you know, it's you know, more of a strategic kind of thought to my career plan, as opposed to, you know, maybe making that move for a new job for another $5,000, right? It's more of that bigger picture and how this impacts me longer term. You know, that I just, you know, it's the skills that you achieve, you know, within those roles that are the more important part than titles and things like that.
No, absolutely. I think the three of us have those conversations quite a bit daily where it's like, look, focus on the role, the responsibilities, and the experience you're getting more so than the title and what you need to be at what age.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
what's been your approach to networking and relationships throughout the course of your career? And I guess part two to that would be, what advice would you give to the audience who's listening?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, unfortunately, when they think of networking, they're saying, I need to get a job today, so I need to start networking. And the whole thing sometimes can be a little awkward, right? Where you're reaching out to people that you haven't talked to in months or years, and you're saying, please, can you help me find a job? My approach is a little bit more on just a regular basis, where I'm just consistently reaching out and talking to people and just seeing how I can help them. Maybe there's a way that I can connect the dots and introduce two people in my network so that it's a win-win for everybody. Perhaps down the line, maybe then, I can reach out to that person and see if there's a way that they can help me with something. But, at that point, then it would be a much easier conversation than someone that I hadn't talked to in months or years, right? But really the goal for me is just to, figure out those ways that I can connect the dots for people.
Mike, you've had a real theme around capital markets throughout your career. How would you define the capital markets piece, and what's your advice to listeners who are interested in taking their career in that direction?
Yeah, I think, broadly, right, capital markets is just a company that has some kind of asset that's illiquid and valuable, but they want to tap into it using some kind of financing source today. That can be so broad, whether it's a PACE lien, autos, or anything. It's just so wide, but that you can still use the capital markets kind of tool belt. For someone looking to get into it, I would really suggest talking to as many people as you can. What are you doing in your day to day? What do you like about your job? To really understand all of the nuances within capital markets and the roles and responsibilities, because you can work within investment banking, rating agencies, or in the corporate world, and all of those roles are a bit unique. It's helpful to just have that background first, to then know how you want to focus, your search and your next steps.
That makes sense, and it goes back to, I think, what you had mentioned earlier about networking, right? It's asking for help doesn't always have to be asking for a job. So just maybe asking somebody who has experience that you ultimately want, how they got it and what recommendations or advice they might have for you. And I'm curious, we talk a lot about technology on this. In these lives and in the podcast, and with regards, I think especially with regards to capital markets, but just generally speaking as well, with the rate of change, or the pace of change, I should say, in technology, how do you see the role of the treasurer evolving?
I think the treasurer role is going to evolve into a business developer kind of role, meaning, leveraging that experience you have with capital markets and financing strategies to create and grow revenue. One of the things that I've been recently focusing a lot on in my role is using those same skills to work with sales and operations and underwriting to create new products for Ygrene to, in essence, grow revenue. And so I think, right, that's clearly then showing the value in a whole new, unique way for the treasurer. And I think it helps to continue to just grow that person's value.
So is there an opportunity, I guess, to follow the tool belt analogy, soft skills and the ability to sell have to be a part of the treasurer's tool belt, right?
I would think so, right? You have that background, right, where it's about connecting the dots for me, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of the dots already as the treasurer, and then it's just understanding, well, what is it that sales is trying to do, right? Oh, wait, I can leverage a number of these kind of things that I've done in the past to create that product for them that then is going to help grow revenue, right? So, I think it's it seems like a natural kind of evolution.
Yeah, that's especially sitting in the treasurer's seat. You kind of have, all the levers to pull, buttons to push, and what's driving the revenue, and you can help drive that. So, so again, your pivot. Talk to me about Ygrene Energy and what you're doing over there, and what Ygrene Energy does.
Yeah. So Ygrene is a property assessed clean energy, or PACE, financing company. We do green energy financing for residential and commercial properties, and we operate in California, Florida, and Missouri. And property assessed clean energy, or PACE, is a type of financing that goes on your taxes, your property taxes. So, for example, if your property taxes in Florida are $10,000 a year, your annual bill for Ygrene is $1,000. Now, all of a sudden, your kind of property taxes are $11,000, right? So it just gets paid as it normally would, again, with your property taxes. And so from Ygrene's standpoint, it's creating a financing solution that is very low risk because it's a tax lien. It's senior to a mortgage, and so that obviously has a number of benefits when you're going to capital markets and you're in my role. From the property owner standpoint, it does also have a number of benefits, especially on the commercial side. If you think of commercial properties, there's a lot of things up in the air right now with its terms of valuations, cash flow, and a number of traditional commercial lenders have pulled back, just as they are waiting to see how things kind of play out. Because we are a tax lien and because we have a different type of underwrite, we are able to still do a lot of originations for commercial properties to give them the upgrades and financing they need, during this challenging time.
So it's kind of, and forgive the naivety, we talk often about the fact that we're not practitioners, so we're not experts per se in the space. I think I would just, speaking for myself, I think maybe I know enough to be dangerous, but realistically, I mean, in many ways, what you guys do is capital markets, right? Like the whole thing is capital markets focused.
Yeah, we have the 144A securitization platform. We just did a $318 million transaction at the end of July, rated by DBRS. And we also just do other financing strategies. We look into the hedging, private placements, term loans. We have a number of things kind of at our disposal, and it really is just all about balancing that mix, right, between liquidity, cost of capital, closing costs, things like that, to understand what is the need, for the company and what's the best path forward.
Makes sense. And you mentioned, oh, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just going to say, along those lines, we have a quick question from the Treasury Talent community from Olga. Olga, thanks for your question. She's curious how you're applying any ESG standards to what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a great question. I totally missed addressing that. So we have within our securitizations, we have a green bond assessment. Our last one was from S&P. That is part of our securitizations. We got an E1 on our last securitization, which is the highest rating for the green bond assessment from S&P, and it's a huge part of the process. Obviously it depends on the investor and the investor's approach, but obviously ESG has become very important for many investors, and because we're ESG, some investors can then invest a little bit more because of our green bond and our approach. So, it's been a huge part of Ygrene.
Awesome. And I think, just the whole concept is fascinating, something I personally just feel is really neat. You talked a little bit about the benefits. What are some of the challenges, in particular for somebody like yourself, a capital markets expert at a PACE company?
Yeah, I think it's trying to balance that kind of the qualitative and quantitative aspects of the role. Touched on it briefly previously, but you have this asset. What is the best way to finance that? What are the goals of the company? We could if you take commercial PACE liens, for example, we could securitize those, but then we'd have to build up enough of those assets to make it worthwhile to securitize them. We'd have closing costs with legal and other closing costs, but we'd get a lower cost of funds. But we'd have a huge drain on liquidity because we were waiting all the while to build up enough assets to securitize. Otherwise, we could do, say, a flow of funds or a whole loan sale, and then we'd have better liquidity management, but we'd have a higher cost of funds, right? And so it's always trying to, figure out those, what are those ideal type of strategies, and then in a similar kind of vein, when you're working with investors, I'm working with a AAA investor who's a pension fund, an insurance company, to a BBB investor who's a hedge fund, and it's very different kind of conversation. So you're very much mixing, your kind of quantitative background with your qualitative skills. You have to know what their how they think of these assets, how they think of their investment approach, and how to present your securitization or your investment idea to meet their needs. So it's fun in that regards, where it's just not a black and white kind of role, where you just have to be constantly thinking about a number of different angles when you're pursuing these different strategies.
So along the lines of the different angles and strategies, we had another question come in from Aziz. Aziz, thank you for your question. He asks, how are you managing interest rate risk? Is it managed in a systematic fashion, or is there another way?
Yeah, we've used swaptions in the past. So it's like a swap option. It's an option to buy a swap, I should say. And from our company, it's something that's has been a potential benefit, as regular swaps could be challenging from a liquidity standpoint. The swap could go out of the money and in a significant type of way, and that could be a huge drain on your cash that you weren't anticipating. With a swaption, it's something that you could pay up front for a one-time fee, and then you could exercise it if you're in the money, and realize that gain. So there's obviously the challenge of that upfront cost, but you are gaining the benefit of not having to deal with the liquidity risks and concerns on a day-to-day kind of basis.
I think that's what we have coming in from the community. Scotty, Simon, anything? No? All good.
So many questions, but probably not relevant to the audience. So just thanks for coming on, Mike.
Yeah. With that, Mike, thank you. To echo Scotty's sentiments, thanks for
Had a
joining
great
us.
time. Thanks for having me, guys.
No, of course, of course. So, thanks again for joining us. You know, it's we'll take you off the hot seat on this one, but definitely appreciate your time today. Treasury Talent community, as always, thanks for your participation and for watching. We'll be back again with you next week with another guest, and keep an eye on the Facebook group to figure out who that is. We'll make that announcement early next week. So with that, we'll let you go on your way. Thanks a lot, Mike. Take care.